In the Hebrew Bible, Dagon was characterized as the chief god of the Philistines who lived in Canaan from 1200 to 600 BCE. According to Joshua, Judges, and Samuel, Dagon was worshipped by the Philistines in the temples at Gaza and Ashdod. Now, the Philistines are characterized as a warmongering and aggressive people who occupied territory southwest of Israel between the Mediterranean Sea and the Jordan River. If you do have an old Bible, you can go to the back of that Bible and turn there. You may see a map, and the map will point to you exactly where I'm talking about. The name Philistine comes from the Hebrew word Philistia, and the Greek rendering of the name Palestini gives us the modern name Palestine. Because of their maritime history, the Philistines are often associated with the Sea People. The Bible records that the Philistines had contact with both Abraham and Isaac as early as 2000 BC. You can see Genesis chapter 21, verse 32, Genesis chapter 34, Genesis chapter 26, verse 1, and Genesis chapter 8. It is also believed that the Philistines were these great oppressors of the Israelites, but even before that, in Judges chapter 13, it says that the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, so the Lord delivered them into the hands of the Philistines for 40 years. Judges chapter 13 also speaks of the birth of Samson, whose mother was barren before that. An angel appeared to her and told her that she will birth a son and that she should never cut his hair because he is a Nazirite and set apart by God for the purposes of delivering Israel out of the hands of the Philistines. Remember, I told you in my last video that the God of the Bible is evil and loves the drama and chaos. He started with this whole sin shit. The God of the Bible is evil. Remember as well that he could very well get rid of evil and do away with the whole transactional system he set up, but it's better to pretend that he gave people free will, all so that he can torture them to death, and they eventually turn to him out of desperation. People don't love the God of the Bible. People don't love Yahweh. They fear him and don't want to suffer. That is the setup. Anyway, Samson is born and God uses him and bestows upon him great strength. They end up, and when I say they, I mean Samson's parents, killing a goat for a burnt offering, because what would good old bloodthirsty Yahweh be if he wasn't getting burnt offerings and watching bloodshed all of the time? So yeah, Samson is born, and I want to read to you about him, and this is very important because when you hear of the story of Samson and Delilah, many men present Samson as if he is this noble, sinless character who was betrayed by a beautiful seductress who cut off his hair and made him lose his strength. So in Judges chapter 14, verse 1, if you want to follow along, it says, Samson went down to Timnah and saw there a young Philistine woman. When he returned, he said to his father and mother, I have seen a Philistine woman in Timnah. Now get her for me as my wife. His father and mother replied, Isn't there a more acceptable woman among your relatives or among all of our people? Must you go to the uncircumcised Philistine to get a wife? But Samson said to his father, Get her for me. She's the right one for me. I want her. And, it says in parentheses after this, his parents did not know that this was from the Lord, who was seeking an occasion to confront the Philistines, for at the time they were ruling over Israel. So Yahweh is in the background of all of this. This entire story between Samson and Delilah, Yahweh, the God of the Bible, is in the background, stirring the pot and stirring the shit. He's the one who decided to put Israel under the heel of the Philistine. And just to reiterate that, it says his parents did not know that this was from the Lord, who was seeking an occasion to confront the Philistines, for at the time they were ruling over Israel. And this is another thing with the God of the Bible. He's always using people to do his dirty work. He could easily do the shit he wanted to do on his own without involving anyone's help. But instead, he uses all of these people to try to get things done that didn't even really need to be done. He could have simply just said, well, I don't like sin anymore. I don't want people to die anymore. Let's just end it right here so there's no more war. There's no more bloodshed. There's no more drama. But it doesn't happen that way because Yahweh is an instigator. He's also a racist. And I'm going to let you listen to this as well. So in regards to Samson, this man in this story of Samson and Delilah, this is a man who is out of control. He's out of control. He's violent. No one ever tells him no. He does what he wants. He's a judge. He's up there as one of these key people in Israel. Everyone has to respect him, and he's out of control. Now, verse 5 of chapter 14 says, So Samson went down to Timnah together with his father and mother. As they approached the vineyards of Timnah, suddenly a young lion came roaring toward him. The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him, so that he tore the lion apart with his bare hands, as he might have torn a young goat. But he told neither his father nor his mother what he had done. Then he went down and talked with the woman, and he liked her. So this is on his way to getting yet another wife. And then it says sometimes later when he went back to marry her, he turned aside to look at the lion's carcass, and in it he saw a swarm of bees and some honey. He scooped out the honey with his hands and ate as he went along. When he rejoined his parents, he gave them some, and they too ate. But he did not tell them where he had taken the honey from, or where he had taken it, like he took it out of the lion's carcass. He didn't tell his parents that before he gave them this honey. Something else that's very problematic with Samson. So now it says in verse 10, Now his father went down to see the woman, and there Samson held a feast as was customary for young men. So this is the issue with Samson when we say that Samson is out of control. And he has a lot of enemies because of his behavior, because of his rage, because of his actions towards the Philistine. Here he is sitting on the throne of all Israel, but for some reason he finds himself in the Philistines' camp. He's marrying Philistine women. He's doing all of these things. He's dealing with all of these people that he should not be dealing with. And instead of him just dealing with it and letting it stay there, he decides to torment them. These people are not doing anything to Samson. If you read the story, you can read Judges 14, 15, and 16. The Philistines are kind of chilling out. They have beef with the Israelites, but for the most part, you know the order. And Israel knows that God put them at that position with the Philistine. So it's not the Philistines' fault that God gave Israel over to these people. It's not the Philistines' fault. So back to the book of fairy tales and nonsense. I think this is still Judges chapter 14. Let's go down to 10. And this is just another example of how Samson is racking up these enemies. He's racking up these enemies. Everyone hates him. He's doing the most to irritate people. He's a tyrant. Again, he's all over the place, stirring up shit. So similar to the God of the Bible, right? The shit starter, the shit stirrer. You want to antagonize people and you want to give people a hard time. So in verse 10, this is what it says. Now, his father went down to see the woman, and there Samson held a feast as was customary for young men. When the people saw him, they chose 30 men to be his companions. Let me tell you a riddle, Samson said to them. If you can give me the answer within 7 days of the feast, I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 sets of clothes. If you can't tell me the answer, you must give me 30 linen garments and 30 sets of clothes. Tell us your riddle, they said. Let's hear it. He replied, out of the eater, something to eat. Out of the strong, something sweet. For 3 days, they could not give the answer. On the 4th day, they said to Samson's wife, coax your husband into explaining the riddle for us, or we will burn you and your father's household to death. Did you invite us here to steal our property? Then Samson's wife threw herself on him, sobbing, you hate me. You don't really love me. You'd give me to my people a riddle, but you haven't told me the answer. It says completely, you've given my people a riddle, but you haven't told me the answer. She's crying to him. She's pissed off. I haven't even explained it to my father and mother, he replied. So why should I explain it to you? She cried the whole 7 days of the feast. So on the 7th day, he finally told her because she continued to press him. She in turn explained the riddle to her people. And this was the answer. Before sunset on the 7th day, the men of the town said to him, what is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion? Samson said to them, "If you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have solved my riddle. He's so fresh." Then the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him. He went down to Ashkelon, struck down 30 of their men, stripped them of everything, and gave their clothes to those who had explained the riddle. Burning with anger, he returned to his father's home, and Samson's wife was given to one of his companions who had attended him at the feast. So even when hearing this story, you know outright that Samson is not a noble man. The reason why he's so pissed off in this situation is because he attempted to trick these people out of the clothes on their backs. And he didn't have to because he already had so much. The reason why he was able to make this bet is because he already had the ducats in his possession to make such a bet. What he wanted is more than what he already had, and that was his issue. And this is the reason why he was so upset. And it doesn't stop there. He doesn't stop with the Philistines until he can seek out more revenge. So when you're reading the story of Samson, he goes on and on and on to torment these people. So in chapter 15, it says, just to continue on with the story of this beef that he already had with this people that he invited to this feast, again, he's tormenting them. In chapter 15, it says, later on, at the time of the wheat harvest, Samson took a young goat and went to visit his wife. He said, "I'm going to my wife's room. I was so sure that you hated her," his father said, "that I gave her to your companion. Isn't her sister more attractive? Take her instead." Samson said to them, "This time I have a right to get even with the Philistines. I will really harm them." So he went out and caught 300 foxes and tied them tail to tail in pairs. He then fastened a torch to every pair of tails, lit the torches, and let the foxes loose in the standing grain of the Philistines. He burned up the shocks and standing grain together with the vineyards and olive groves. So this is major property damage. These vineyards and these grains, this is how these people eat. This is how they make a living. He basically, ruined their stock, their stock for the year, or however many years, depending on how much grain was there, right? And it says in verse 6, when the Philistines asked, "Who did this?" they were told, "Samson, the Timnite's son-in-law, because his wife was given to his companion." So the Philistines went up and burned her and her father to death. Samson said to them, "Since you've acted like this, I swear that I won't stop until I get my revenge on you." He attacked them viciously and slaughtered many of them. Then he went down and stayed in a cave in the rock of Etam. The Philistines went up and camped in Judah, spreading out near Lehi. The people of Judah asked, "Why have you come to fight us? Why have you come here?" So all of these events are occurring because, again, Samson is the one who originally started this whole drama. He is the one who invited these people to this feast. He is the one who made this ridiculous bet and with this stupid riddle. He is the one who set up the whole operation and then got pissed off because he didn't win what he set out to win from the people who he invited to this feast. So you see the problem here? The problem is Samson. He could have simply had a regular feast. Everyone eats, they get fat, they get drunk, they go home. No, Samson wants the feast essentially to be paid by them. And this is the reason why I believe he held that stupid riddle over their head. So this entire story in Judges about Samson is about his behavior and how one instance where he had this stupid riddle and he had this stupid bet turned into this ginormous snowstorm of a problem. Then in verse 11, this is what it says. Then 3,000 men from Judah went down to the cave in the rock of Etam and said to Samson, "Don't you realize that the Philistines are rulers over us? What have you done to us?" Not only was he causing problems with the Israelites, he was causing problems with the Philistine. He was causing problems everywhere he went. He was a problem. He was a problem kid. He was a spoiled brat. And then he answered, "I merely did to them what they did to me." That's verse 11. Verse 12. Then they said to him, "We've come to tie you up and to hand you over to the Philistines." Samson said, "Swear to me that you won't kill me yourselves." "Agreed," they answered. "We will only tie you up and hand you over to them. We will not kill you." So they bound him with 2 new ropes and led him up from the rock. Because remember, he killed a few people and then he went to Bohai. So in verse 14, it says, as he approached Lehi, the Philistines came toward him, shouting. The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him again. There's Yahweh always intervening when he shouldn't be intervening, because he's the one who started this whole nonsense. The ropes on his arm became like charred flax, and the bindings dropped from his hand. Finding a fresh jawbone of a donkey, he grabbed it and struck down 1,000 men. Then Samson said, with the donkey's jawbone, I have made donkeys of them. With the donkey's jawbone, I have killed 1,000 men. When he finished speaking, he threw away the jawbone, and the place was called Ramath Lehi. Because he was very thirsty, he cried out to the Lord, you have given your servant this great victory. Must I now die of thirst and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised? Because he's still around these Philistines, right? And it's just so disgusting how the Lord, or the God of the Bible, or Yahweh, decides to reward Samson with victory after victory after victory for doing something that he should not have been doing anyway. The only sin of the Philistines is that they worship another god other than Yahweh. I already read to you, they worship the god. So they worship another god, and the Yahweh doesn't like it. And because Yahweh doesn't like it, he makes it so that these people are tormented. But also, at the same time, Israel doesn't want to worship him. So instead of him dealing with Israel and turning their hearts, because it says that, in the Bible, God can change your heart. He doesn't change the heart of the Israelites. They never choose him. They are disobedient to him. And because of their disobedience, the God, Yahweh, the God of the Bible, hands them over to these Philistines who worship another God. Why can't God just simply do what he wants to do outright? He doesn't do that, but we're going to get to Delilah in 1 minute. And the reason why I'm speaking about Yahweh and Samson so much is because in regards to Delilah, she had nothing to do with all of these circumstances, right? She had nothing to do with it. But for some reason, she's placed in the Bible as a villain because I'm going to get to the story later. But in regards to the heart thing, it says, if you read the Bible, especially if you read the book of Romans, Paul speaks about, or Moses talks about how God hardened the heart of Pharaoh. So you already know the story of Pharaoh. You already know this story with the parting of the sea and all of this other bullshit. And it says that God, instead of softening Pharaoh's heart to let Moses and his people go, God instead hardened Pharaoh's heart so that Pharaoh would not let his people go. So if God can harden the heart of Pharaoh, then God can do anything. He could simply make the Israelites he loves so much worship him because he has that ability to do so, but he does not. So I think I've given you all enough of the backstory of the Samson and Delilah situation. We know that for the most part, Delilah doesn't really get introduced to the scenario until the near ending of Samson's life. Prior to Delilah, Samson had already been, walking and stirring shit in the streets on his own. Delilah had nothing to do with what he did prior to her meeting him. Right? So we have Samson, and you already know the backstory. You already know the beef. There's a back and forth. He killed 1,000 men with a donkey's jawbone, and the people who he killed, they want to avenge the ones that they lost. They have unfinished business with Samson. And rightfully so. Samson is, again, a tyrant. He's a terrorist, right? So these people are looking for him because they have blood to shed with his name on it. So instead of him being dealt with in that way, Yahweh, the God of the Bible, allows Samson to escape all of these grooves and up these chutes and down these ladders because his hair is long, and the Lord is with Samson because of this hair. Right? And I already spoke to you about his mother being barren and the pact that they made, the vow that they made. She wouldn't cut his hair. And as long as his hair was long, then the Lord was with him, which is also problematic. Everyone has to see that that is problematic. Why would the Lord attach himself to an individual on the basis of something like hair? If you want to be with someone because you love them, then be with them. But to love them because they have long hair is just more Yahweh, just more nonsense from the Bible, just more ridiculousness, right? So let's get to Samson and Delilah. And this is Judges chapter 16. If you want to follow along, you can. I will read it for you. So it says, one day, Samson went to Gaza, where he saw a prostitute. He went to spend the night with her. The people of Gaza were told, Samson is here. There Samson is, always chasing after women. Other scholars say that Samson was a womanizer. His weakness work was women, and he had all of these issues where he had multiple wives and women, and women were his weakness, right? So him being found in Gaza, the reason why he got caught was because he was following his dick to women, right? He would have never gotten caught if he didn't sleep with this prostitute in Gaza. And this is what it says, verse 2. The people in Gaza were told, Samson is here. So they surrounded the place and lay in wait for him all night at the city gate. They made no move during the night, saying, at dawn, we'll kill him. Verse 3, but Samson lay there only until the middle of the night. Then he got up and took hold of the doors of the city gate together with the two posts and tore them loose, bar and all. He lifted them to his shoulders and carried them to the top of the hill that faced Hebron. Sometime later, he fell in love with the woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. This is verse 4. The rulers of the Philistines went to her and said, see if you can lure him into showing you the secret of his great strength and how we can overpower him so we may tie him up and subdue him. Each one of us will give you 1,100 shekels of silver. This is the proposition to Delilah. That's it. That's what they told her to do. And we all know that this story is allegorical. We know that these people never existed. We know that these early scholars and these early religious men, they needed a way to get people to do what they wanted. So they put what they wanted for them to do in code in this book. The story of Samson and his hair being cut is more so these religious men believing that hair should not be cut, similar to why you see some men grow hair on the sides. They're not allowed to cut their hair. We totally get it. And if you want to go further, you can speak about the Rastafarian men and how some Rastas believe that your hair is your strength and you need to grow your hair long. And all of that is based on this nonsense story where these people didn't even friggin' exist. So we're back to Delilah. She gets this proposition. And if anything, we can call Delilah a city girl. She's no different from the sprinkle girls that are out there, right? She's about her bag. The scripture says that Samson fell in love with her. We never read that she fell in love with him. There's no indication that Delilah actually even liked this man. But she did see 1,100 shekels of silver on the table. And what girl is not about her money, right? This is why Delilah should be a hero to a lot of young women, because if anything, for the girls who are on TikTok, who are all, no money, no honey, don't give him any cookie if you're not getting any nookie, all the nonsense. This is what Delilah basically was. She was about her bag, and she did what she needed to do to get this money. So Delilah said to Samson, tell me the secret of your great strength and how you can be tied up and subdued. Samson answered her, if anyone ties me with 7 fresh bowstrings that have not been dried, I will become as weak as any other man. And this is how you know that Samson is not only a barbarian, he's also not very smart. Why would that question even be answered from a woman who you don't even know? This is how you know he's not that bright. Because if you're just meeting a woman and the first question that she asks you is, how can I tie you up and subdue you? Maybe you should think twice before you give her that information. But nonetheless, let's continue with the fairy tale nonsense. Verse 8, then the rulers of the Philistines brought her 7 fresh bowstrings that had not been dried, and she tied him with them. When the men hidden in the room, she called to him, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. But he snapped the bowstrings as easily as a piece of string snaps when it comes close to a flame. So the secret of his strength was not discovered. Verse 10, then Delilah said to Samson, you have made a fool of me. You lied to me. Come now, tell me how you can be tied. Why would you continue to give this woman any information? Is Delilah wrong? Delilah isn't wrong. Delilah is interested in getting her 1,100 shekels of silver. Samson is the idiot for answering these questions regarding his strength and his personal secrets with Yahweh, the God of the Bible. Verse 11, he said, if anyone ties me securely with new ropes that have never been used, I'll become as weak as any other man. And here we go again with the nonsense. So verse 12, Delilah took new ropes and tied him with them. Then with the men hidden in the room, she called to Samson, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. But he snaps the ropes off of his arms as if they were threads. And it goes again, verse 13. Delilah then said to Samson, All this time, you've been making a fool of me and lying to me. Tell me how you can be tied. He replied, if you weave the 7 braids of my head into the fabric of the loom and tighten it with a pin, I'll become as weak as any other man. So while he was sleeping, Delilah took the 7 braids of his head, wove them into the fabric, and tightened it with a pin. Again she called to him, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. He awoke from his sleep and pulled up the pin with the loom and pulled it out of the fabric. Verse 15, then she said to him, how can you say I love you when you won't confide in me? This is the 3rd time you've made a fool of me and haven't told me the secret of your great strength. With such nagging, she prodded him day after day until he was sick to death of it. Right? So he told her everything. No razor has ever been used on my head. He said, because I have been a Nazirite dedicated to God from my mother's womb. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me and I would become as weak as any other man. Verse 18, when Delilah saw that he had told her everything, she sent word to the rulers of the Philistines, come back once more. He has told me everything. So the rulers of the Philistines returned with the silver in their hands. They came back with her money. After putting him to sleep on her lap, she called for someone to shave off the 7 braids of his hair, and so began to subdue him, and his strength left him. Then she called Samson, the Philistines are upon you. He awoke from his sleep and thought, I'll go out as before and shake myself free, but he did not know the Lord had left him. Then the Philistines seized him, gouged out his eyes, and took him down to Gaza. Binding him with bronze shackles, they sent him to the grinding grain in the prison, but the hair on his head began to grow again after it had been shaved. So there we have it. Like, we can read all day, but let's go back to the scripture with Delilah. Delilah has 2 sentences in Samson's life. So the fact that she's made out to be this villain because, you know, Samson's hair was cut, if you read the scripture again, let's go back to it. Let's go back. Where was it? It was verse, let's see. Let me go back. It says after she kept on nagging him. This is in verse 18. It says, when Delilah saw that he had told her everything, she sent word to the rulers of the Philistines, come back once more. He told me everything. So the rulers of the Philistines returned with the silver in their hands. After putting him to sleep for her lap, she called for someone to shave off the 7 braids. She didn't even get her hands dirty, technically. She's not the one who cut his hair. She called someone else to do it. Delilah was about her money. And it doesn't say in the book of Judges whether or not she survived. It didn't say if she felt guilty. It didn't say that she loved him back. It doesn't even say that they had sex. So if anything, Delilah is clear. And this is why justice should be given to Delilah, because she had nothing to do with Samson's behavior and them subduing him. Samson is the cause of his own demise. Samson is the one who caused this whole scenario where he became this villain and people were looking to kill him because he's the one who killed people first. Right? We read about the donkey jawbone. We read about the poor lion that brought nothing to him. We read about all of the things that this man has done. But for some reason, when you hear the story about Delilah, it's, well, you know, she's the reason why Samson lost his strength. No, she's not the reason why Samson lost his strength. The Lord left Samson. The Lord left Samson when his hair was cut. The Lord did not have to leave Samson when his hair was cut, because if you love something or if you love someone, you don't leave them because their appearance changes. And this is the God of the Bible. This is Yahweh, right? He puts all of his love based on some nonsense, and then when it's not there, he leads them. So let's see what happens to Samson. And I'm sure you all know what happens, but I'm just gonna read a little bit of it. It says the death of Samson. Now, verse 23, the rulers of the Philistines assembled to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon, remember their God, and to celebrate, saying, our God has delivered Samson, our enemy, into our hands. When the people saw him, they praised their God, saying, our God delivered our enemy into our hands. These people have been waiting for this moment with Samson. He's tormented them for a while now. So now it's their time to celebrate because finally, he's captive. And Delilah, they would say Delilah is to blame, but I don't think she's to blame. They would have called him anyway because he was down in Gaza, up some girl's skirt, having fun. If he wasn't in Gaza, if he didn't set up the whole thing with the riddle, Samson would have been in the clear. right? But he didn't. His own actions brought him to this point with his eyes gouged out. He's in a prison. He's grinding grain. And this is what it says. While they were in high spirits, they shouted, "Bring out Samson to entertain us." So they called Samson out of the prison, and he performed for them. When they stood him among the pillars, Samson said to the servant who held his hand, "Put me where I can feel the pillars that support the temple, so that I may lean against them." Now the temple was crowded with men and women. All rulers of the Philistines were there, and on the roof were about 3,000 men and women watching Samson perform. Then Samson prayed to the Lord, "Sovereign Lord, remember me. Please, God, strengthen me just one more, and let me with one blow get revenge on the Philistines for my two eyes." Then Samson reached toward the two central pillars on which the temple stood. Bracing himself against them, his right hand on one and his left hand on the other, Samson said, "Let me die with the Philistines." Then he pushed with all his might, and down came the temple on the rulers and all the people in it. Thus, he killed many more people when he died than when he lived. So in total, we have Samson being one man, and he killed about 4,000 people or more, if you want to count the numbers up. So this is a man who already had problems. This is a man who already started nonsense. He was already a bad guy. Delilah had nothing to do with it. After this story, we don't hear anything about Delilah in the Bible anymore. Not one word. But, now when you hear guys and they talk about red pill and evil women and how Delilah was evil because she cut Samson's hair and she struck down a great man. Samson was not a great man. Samson was a bad guy. He was an idiot. He was not a great man at all. And Delilah had nothing to do with how people felt about Samson. If anything, God let Samson. The Lord let Samson, and the Lord did not have to leave Samson. But Samson's hair was cut, and the Lord decided to leave him, and he didn't have to. He could have stayed with Samson. He could have allowed Samson to, one, not do the things that he did, because again, we spoke about this before. If God can change the heart of Pharaoh, then he can do anything. Why not change the heart of Samson to not being an asshole? If he were not an asshole, he probably would have lived longer and would have been able to bring Israelites to victory, but he didn't. He ruled for 20 years and then he died with the Philistines on that day. And Delilah is a really hot city girl. She's the sprinkle girl. She took that 1,100 shekels of silver. She probably, got herself a new camel, a new pair of Aladdin slippers. I don't know what she bought, but she went away with her 1,100 shekels and she didn't really give a shit about it. She didn't give a shit about any of it. And I don't think she gave a shit because she knew Samson's track record. She felt that, he did deserve to die. He was out of control. But let me know what you think in the comment section. I think the last one that I'm going to do in this series is Justice for Aisha. And I'm really going to have fun doing that one. But get into the comment section, like, share, subscribe. Please visit my Substack, The Stepping Razor. Also visit the community space in YouTube, west4bmovement.com. The Not Our Crimes petition is still going. We're aiming for 500 signatures. I think we have about 300 or so. Thank you so much if you did sign that. Like, share again, and yeah, subscribe.